Hello, second grade readers. Welcome to another reading lesson. I am so proud of the work that you have been doing as series readers. You are working really hard to become experts on these characters, Frog and Toad. Let's look back at some of the work that we have already done. We started by collecting information about the main characters. We were looking at what these characters said, what they did, how they acted, and that helped us to get to know them better. And then we were paying attention to how characters respond to problems. The way that they respond when a problem comes up also helps us get to know what that character is like. Today, we are going to notice the things that are the same across the series. We're looking for patterns today. We're going to add that up to our board. We are on the second chapter of Frog and Toad, and this chapter is called The Kite. One thing that's really cool about this series, Frog and Toad, is that each chapter is kind of like a little story. There's a new problem each time, which helps us to get to know the characters better and to look for things that happen that are the same from our first chapter to our second chapter. When we notice those things, we're finding patterns, and those patterns help us to get to know the character even better. So, our learning target today says, I am learning to find similarities so I can become an expert on characters. Today we're reading a new Frog and Toad story, The Kite. We're going to read and notice what the characters did that reminds us of the story tomorrow, some patterns. And then we're going to stop and jot and write down our ideas on our character study traits paper. And this will help us to get to know the character better and come up with a character trait to describe the characters. All right, let's dive in. I want to first think about our last chapter, Tomorrow, and some things we learned about Frog and Toad. In Tomorrow, I jotted down some ideas as I was reading, and I noticed that Toad was pretty lazy. He did not want to do his chores. He saw all the work in his house that needed to be done, and he said, I'll do it tomorrow. And then there was Frog, who came and encouraged him to do that work. Even though Toad kept saying, tomorrow, tomorrow, Frog was really patient and encouraging. And he said, well, why don't you do a little bit? Maybe get a little bit of work done. And he encouraged Toad to do his chores. So let's remember that about these characters as we talk about our next chapter called The Kite. All right, you should have already read The Kite. I'm not going to read it on the screen. So if you need to pause the video now, that's fine. Make sure you read the next chapter that we gave you in the learning packet, The Kite. All right, let's talk about The Kite. What are some things that we noticed about Frog and Toad? Well, they had a kite that they decided to go fly. And Frog wanted Toad to help. And it kind of seemed like Frog was in charge, didn't it? He was the one telling him, okay, this is what you're going to do. This is what I'm going to do. He was being a leader. So Frog wanted Toad to help, and he was a leader. All right, let's think about what happened in the story as Toad went running across the meadow trying to get that kite up in the air. What happened? It fell to the ground and it wouldn't fly. And then those darn robins were making fun of them because their kite wouldn't fly. So Toad decided to give up. This isn't going to work. So Toad wanted to give up. And what did Frog tell him? No, let's just give it another try. I have another idea. This time, instead of running, let's also jump. So Frog was encouraging. He was telling Toad, let's try it again. Let's do it another way. I have new ideas. And what did Toad do? Wanted to give up. And then another time, Frog said, no, let's do it this way. I've got another idea. And then what did Toad do? He wanted to give up. Each time that the kite would not fly, Toad was just saying, let's just go home. This isn't working. But did Frog let him give up? No, he was being patient and he was being encouraging and telling him, let's try it again, let's try it again. And finally, what happened? The kite went up in the sky and it flew. So they were able to solve that problem. All right, let's think about these characters from the kite, Frog and Toad, and let's think about what we learned from them in tomorrow. Are you noticing any patterns? What are some things that they're doing? How does Frog always act when they're together? How does Toad always act when there's a problem? I'm starting to notice a pattern, and I want to know if you see it too. So grab out your green character study trait paper, and this is where you're going to write down your ideas. This looks a little bit different than your paper last week. In our first column, we have got our characters' names, Frog and Toad. And then here it is asking us, what is the character doing? Or how are they acting? Or what are they saying? This is your text evidence that we talked about last week. You're going to look right in the book, look right in the story, and write down something that Frog did or said, or a way that he acted. And then find another one. The same thing. Another time that he did something, said something, or acted a certain way. Then you're going to use that text evidence to come up with a character trait, a way to describe that character. And you can think about, what patterns am I noticing from this story and our last story? So text evidence, our first two boxes, and then a character trait. And then please do the same for Toad. It's okay if you come up with a similar character trait as our last story, because they act really similar in both stories. But we're using new text evidence because it's a new story. All right, you guys, I'm excited to see what you think of Frog and Toad and tell us what type of characters they are. Good luck!